Welcome to the Dare to Multiply podcast. On this podcast, we help passionate Jesus followers become courageous, obedient disciples who impact their communities for the kingdom of God. I'm your host, Cynthia Anderson, a disciple multiplication coach and trainer. We have some amazing guests coming up, people who are taking risks to launch new discipleship movements in their areas. I can't wait to learn from them and introduce you to their ministries. Together, we'll show you how to make and multiply disciples and groups in your area. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any tools or content coming your way. I also wanted to mention a free newsletter on disciple making that I send out every single week. It's called Daring Disciples, and it's all about how to share your faith, overcome obstacles we all face in the journey toward multiplication. To subscribe to that, go to daretomultiply.com/newsletter. Let's dare to multiply. It can be tough, really, really tough, to find those key people who are really ready to do what it takes to make and multiply disciples, to obey Jesus. How do we find those people? We often feel alone in this task, right? We feel like we're the only ones who are really serious about this. And you know, how do we find people who are willing to share the gospel, who are willing to pray devotedly and to follow up and start new groups and get something going? How do you do this other than by prayer? Which is huge, right? You're going to hear me talk about that a lot all the time. But there's another key that I want to talk about today on the episode, and it's train like crazy. That is a key to finding those key people who are going to move forward with you to multiply disciples. So I'll be back with that in just a moment. Are you busy but not seeing the fruit you long for? Dissatisfied with your present level of impact on those around you, or frustrated with traditional methods of discipleship that don't seem to be effective? If so, the Getting Started in Disciple Making Movements course may be just what you need. Inside the Getting Started program, you'll get access to a step-by-step proven approach to making and multiplying disciples. Not only will you receive 25 short and practical video teachings spread out over 6 modules, but you'll have a chance to connect with others for group coaching via our monthly Zoom calls. And even more importantly, you'll become part of a global community of like-minded people from all over the world who are passionately committed to following Jesus and impacting others around them. If you want to get unstuck and begin moving forward as a disciple who makes disciples, I encourage you to go to courses.dmmsfrontiermissions.com and sign up for this powerful program today. And now to today's episode. Okay, so we're talking about training like crazy in order to find those key people. But there's another part to this. We train like crazy, but we also, what I mean like crazy is we train a ton of people, but we also need to filter ruthlessly. Train like crazy, but filter ruthlessly. We want to train everyone and anyone who is even a tiny bit willing to learn how to prayer walk in their community, to learn how to share their story, their testimony, to learn how to do discovery Bible studies and scripture studies in a participatory way. We want to train everyone who will listen and wants to learn at all how to find a person of peace. We train like crazy. But what happens after we train is really super important. We have to filter after training for those implementers. We have to filter for those people who have chosen to obey and put into practice the knowledge that they've gained in the training that you did. Just the other day, I was talking to one of our hosts of a training that we had in South Asia. And I was talking to him and he said, you know, sister, he called me Dee Dee. That's what the term they use in that language. They said, Cindy Dee Dee or Cynthia Dee Dee. I've been following up, and I have called every single person who went to the training that you ran when you came. And I said, wow, that's amazing. Because there were like 60 people. That's a lot of follow up. He was willing to call all of those people. And then I asked him, so how are they doing? How are they putting it into practice? And he said, oh, most of them say that they've been busy with this or they've been busy with that, and they make many excuses as to why they haven't actually started to share their testimony, to pray for others, to reach out to the lost, or to start a discovery group. And they had so many excuses. And so I asked him this question. I said, so my friend, my brother, who are the top 5 people in all of those 60 people that you talked to? Who are the top 5 people who have at least done something? Do you have even 5 people? Tell me their names. And so he began to list off their names to me. And I told him, okay, now just forget about the other 55 people. I want you to focus on those 5 people. Pray for them every day. Go and visit them and see what they're doing. Go out and do ministry together with them. Invest in those 5 people, because those are the ones that through whom you're going to see some traction. You're going to see something actually beginning. And we call this process of focusing and finding those key people who are implementing, we call this filtering. I said, don't invest your time. You're a busy guy. You've got lots going on. Don't invest more time in following up forever and ever with those who aren't responsive and who are just saying they're too busy. Let them be for a while at least. And I want you to focus on the implementers and filter your time to invest in them. You know, we see that Jesus did this, and he filtered as he was speaking to the crowds, you know, and he spoke to so many people, and he trained broadly, you might say. He cast vision broadly to many, many people. He taught the crowds, and the crowds followed him. They followed him because they saw his miracles. John chapter 6 is a really good example of a time when Jesus was willing to filter the crowd, to find those who were really serious about following him. The whole chapter is kind of interesting and a great study, but we read in chapter 6 how he feeds the 5,000, right? And this great miracle where people are provided for, turns the loaves and fish into bread to feed the multitude. He then walks on the water, again, a dramatic miracle, and calms the storm. And he then goes deeper and gives a calling to people to accept the truth that he is the Son of God. And he teaches to the crowd about how he is the bread of life and how they must be willing to eat his flesh and drink his blood, right? Which was a confusing thing and something that people still debate today, right? It was a confusing thing, but he was calling them to a deeper walk with him, to a deeper buy-in, to a deeper acceptance of who he was, not just what he could do for them, but who he truly was and what it meant to follow him. And it says that after this, many left him. After this, many left him. Are we willing to call people to a level of commitment where some will leave us? Where some will leave the program, the discipleship program we're running, where some will not want to come back to the next training because this is just a little too intense for me. We have to be willing to filter by calling people to greater commitment to Jesus and to obedience to him. In Matthew 16:24, there's another verse that I know you all know, but it says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. We need to be willing to call people to take up the cross of disciple making, to not just be hearers of the word, but to be doers of it. And that if they're not willing to do that, then we're not willing to invest more time and energy in training them. I know that can sound kind of harsh, but if we don't have that filter, we will invest all kinds of time and energy in the wrong people who are not going to be be the people who lead to disciple multiplication happening. And I want to encourage you that if you invest in the right people and you get something going, others who were not so interested will become more interested. And some of those people who were not implementing will see what's happening and begin to be motivated and challenged. But you have to start with that small group of people who really bought in and give more time and energy to them. Jesus talked about this in John 14, 15 to 17 as well, where Jesus was talking to his disciples. I just want to read that as well. John 14, 15 to 16, 15 to 17, sorry. It says this. It says, "If you love me, keep my commands. And I will ask the Father, and he will give another advocate to help you and be with you forever, the Spirit of truth." Right? So Jesus is telling his disciples so clearly that if they truly love him, they will obey his commands. If you want to read that in the Message Bible, it's really, really wonderful in the Message Bible. Let's see, maybe I can just read it to you. I love this translation. It says, "If you love me, show it by doing what I've told you. I will talk to the Father, and he'll provide you another friend so that you will always have someone with you. This friend is the Spirit of truth. The godless world can't take him in because it doesn't have eyes to see him, doesn't know what to look for, but you know him already because he has been staying with you and will even be in you." Again, I love the way it puts it. If you love me, show it by doing what I've told you. If we truly love Jesus, we have to show it in our actions and in our obedience. And we should be unafraid to call people to that. Not everyone is going to buy into that. Not everyone is going to be willing to do that you train. But those who do are the ones that you want to invest more time in. So that's what it looked like for Jesus. And everything we do in disciple making always comes back to, what did Jesus do? I want to be like him. How did Paul the Apostle do it? How did the New Testament believers do it? How can we learn from the model that Jesus gave them and that they followed, that led to seeing so many thousands all across the Roman Empire come to know our Lord Jesus? So let's talk about, what does filtering look like for us as we're training people? Train everyone you can. Train as many people as possible. Multiply trainers who also go and train. But after training, you need to follow up. Follow up is so, so key. You cannot filter for the fruitful, for the faithful, unless you follow up. My friend Kevin Sutter, who we worked together in India and for many years, he used to say, training without follow-up coaching is worthless. And I have to say, I agree with him. If we train people and we don't look at what they do with what we've trained, I think we are just giving knowledge, which knowledge by itself does not make disciples, right? Knowledge will not make disciples and transform communities. It's obedience to Jesus' commands, not just hearing them and knowing about them, but putting them into practice. So we must follow up. So many trainings that are run have zero expectation of actions taking place. They're all about knowledge only. And even less trainings that are run around the world and in the US as well have real follow-up, right? To see how many people actually did something with what they learned. We gain knowledge and we go on to another topic and we gain more knowledge. My mission is very guilty of that. In our discipleship training schools, we have a topic and we learn about it, and then we go on to the next topic, and then we go on to the next topic, and there's no even space given to put those things into practice, and there's no checking whether or not we actually applied. It's knowledge. We have to be so careful about that. Jesus warned about that. In the parable of the wise and foolish builder, we need to be people who Don't just hear, but put into practice what Jesus taught. So we need to follow up. Make sure that you have it in your training plan as you're training people, that you will follow up and see what did they do with what they have been trained in. Watch for those who have made solid attempts to apply. They may not yet have led people to Christ. They may not have baptized anybody or started a new group, though I hope many of them will. But look for those who actually have made attempts and celebrate those attempts, right? We don't only celebrate the victories, we celebrate risk taking, we celebrate attempts. If somebody says, I went out and I tried to talk to somebody at the grocery store and I prayed for someone in the restaurant and they weren't healed and I don't know what to do, I feel so discouraged. Celebrate that they took a risk of faith to pray for somebody out in the marketplace, right? That they were willing to risk that. Celebrate those attempts. Those people, if you continue to train them and continue to encourage them, are going to see fruit in the future. Third thing is invest more time in them. Invest more time in those people. Some of those people are going to see some great fruit. They're naturally apostolically gifted. They're natural evangelists, and they're just going to take off as soon as they're equipped. Other people are going to need more nurturing. But if you see that they're trying to make an attempt, then spend time with them. You might need to go with them in the field and model for them more and help them. I remember there was someone who had gone through our online training and really had a passionate heart to reach Muslims. And yet she just didn't know how. And I went to visit her and was able to just go out with her into a mall. And we met a young Muslim woman and I started a conversation. I was able to share with her. And she was like walking away. She said, that was really easy. I think I can do that. You know, some people just need to see it happen so that they can have the courage and confidence. So invest more time, life on life, modeling, going out with them to do the work of disciple making. Obviously, you can't do that with the many that you train, right? When you train like crazy. But when you filter ruthlessly, you can determine a few key people that you are going to do more mentoring with and really invest your life in. The next thing I wanted to mention is you need to create a culture of follow-up and obedience being required if you're going to train people, right? A lot of people, hear about my ministry or whatever, and they want me to come and run a conference or run a training. You know what? I don't do conferences anymore. I like to train people so that they can actually do something, right? And it's really important. Often when I'm running a training, I will say, this is not a conference. This is a training. What's the difference between a conference and a training, right? A conference we go to receive encouragement and be together with other believers and have great worship times and draw near to God. But it's not really about being equipped. So we need to differentiate between what is a conference and what is a training that we're running, where we're actually expecting them to do something, and make that clear even before you start to train them or before you run that class or before you go and train in that location. So create a culture of follow-up and obedience being something that is expected after a training. And then, as you sift out people who didn't apply and aren't willing to apply, don't be discouraged. You might have trained 100 people and you only end up with 5 or 6 who are actually applying. That's pretty good, actually, on an average. So don't be discouraged if, after training you only have a small number. Jesus taught thousands, but he had the 12, right, that he really invested himself into. So how do you find those key people? They're not going to be the wisest, the smartest. They're not going to be the ones who raise their hand in class and answer the questions right. They may have all the answers, but not be implementers. Don't waste time with those people. Only invest your time in those who are actually doing something. We want to create that culture. It is so key to disciple multiplication that we have a culture of obedience, a culture of implementation, that is expected of us. We expect it of ourselves, and we require it of ourselves, that I will not learn and not apply. This is the lifestyle of a disciple, not just somebody who's a consumer or church attendee. Okay? There were some things that I determined in my own heart that I was going to shift, and these have made a huge difference in the fruitfulness of those I train. I decided that I would not agree to go and train unless the person that was hosting the training committed to me that they would follow up. There was a follow-up plan in place that they are committed to, and that we would have at least 2 more trainings in that location. Now, that doesn't always happen because sometimes there's no follow-up or they don't always follow through, but at least before I agree to go and train, I want to know that there is a follow-up plan in place and that I will be coming back, or someone else will be coming back at least 2 more times to train those who are implementers, so that you can do what we call just-in-time training. And then, the other thing that was hard for me, but I think is so important, is we need to be willing to stop training those who don't obey and apply. And, we don't need to be rude about it. It doesn't mean we don't love those people. It doesn't mean that we don't care about them. But we sometimes overtrain the same people over and over and over. We're training the same people, hoping that they will do something with it when they don't. You need to be willing to stop training them. Lots of people love community, so they come to the training because they like the community that's involved. Lots of people love knowledge. They love to talk knowledgeably about disciple making, but they're not actually practicing disciple making. This is actually kind of counterproductive to have those people continuing to do that, because it creates this culture of disobedience, right? That it's okay to come and learn and enjoy without doing. And we want to shift that culture to a culture of obedience. So be willing to stop training them. And if you see a real desire, but they're not doing anything, again, like I said before, maybe you need to go into the field with them and model some things, or take them on an outreach, or, do a missions trip or whatever it is, so that they can get some practical experience and kind of get kickstarted in the field with you, so that they can apply in other contexts as well. And then the last thing I want to say as we wrap this up is turn the implementers into trainers quickly. Don't wait, right? They may not be that knowledgeable. Often new believers are better at this than people who've been believers for 20 years, right? They don't need to be an expert to become a trainer of others. They just need to be one step ahead. So if you have some implementers who are putting something into practice, pair them with some other people that they train and model for, and get them involved in becoming trainers of others very quickly. Don't wait for them to become an expert or to have a ton of Bible knowledge or anything, but go ahead and quickly turn the implementers into trainers. Sometimes we have people who have a real teaching gift and we want to make them the trainers, but they're not the best trainers because they don't have real life stories to tell, right? Sometimes you can pair somebody like that with somebody who's an implementer who maybe doesn't have a teaching gift and, do things in that kind of way. But as much as possible, let the people who are doing be the ones who you, in a sense, elevate, because that creates a culture that says, these are the people who we want to become. We want to be like them. We want to be people who are implementing and putting into practice. So I hope this is helpful. Train like crazy, but be willing to filter ruthlessly. I'll be right back with a recap and an action step for you in just a moment.
Imagine a world where passionate followers of Jesus come together to multiply, transforming lives beyond imagination. Instead of toiling with little fruit, what if God's abundance flowed beyond your wildest dreams? Picture those you've invested in sharing Jesus freely, creating a ripple effect of disciple making. In her new book, The Multiplier's Mindset, Cynthia Anderson reveals how shifting mindsets can revolutionize disciple making. When Cynthia and her colleagues experienced these mindset shifts, they saw enormous results, including the launching of 19 multiplying movements in Africa and Asia, transforming tens of thousands of lives. This book will help you discover hidden harvesters, see church members move from passivity to passion, and release the power of simplicity in multiplying disciples. Don't remain stuck. Learn to move toward greater fruitfulness. Visit multipliersmindset.com and get your copy of the Multipliers Mindset today.
All right, quick recap. Again, I was exhorting us, challenging us to train as many people as you possibly can in the basics of disciple making, prayer walking, sharing their testimony, doing discovery Bible study, how to find a person of peace. Train like crazy. But after you train, be willing to filter, and sometimes to filter ruthlessly, meaning it can be hard to do that filtering work and to tell people, no, you can't come back until you have put into practice what we taught last time. But be willing to do that, and you're going to see that you discovered those people who are really serious and who, as you invest your time in them, are going to see more fruit. We talked about how Jesus did this. He was willing to call the crowds to greater commitment to him. And he was willing to tell people, unless you take up your cross and follow me, you cannot be my disciple. He was willing to ask those hard things of people in order to filter for those who were truly serious, who were following him for the right reasons, not just for what they could gain from him. And when the crowds fell away, he was willing to accept that and work with those who stayed. We talked about different scriptures about that. Matthew 16:24, which I just referenced, and John 14:15-17, that talks about, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Follow-up has to be a requirement. If we want to have effective training, it has to have follow-up. And then it has to have a commitment to ongoing training and coaching of those people. So here's your action step. Are you a trainer of others? If you are, I want you to think about, how can I train more people and multiply the numbers of people who are being trained? And then I want you to ask, what will you do next time that you train to filter for those who actually apply, and make sure that that follow-up and filtering is part of the plan for the class you're running, the training you're running, or even if it's just a training you're running in a living room with a few people. What are you going to do to follow up to make sure? And we know in the Discovery Bible Study that implementation question is asked. What did we do? How did we do it obeying? And what are we going to do to obey? What's our I will statement? So just bring that concept into the broader picture of training, that when you're training a larger group of people in disciple multiplication, how can you make sure that you're following up and filtering? God bless you guys. Go out and make and multiply disciples this week, and we'll see you back next week on the next episode. That's all we've got for this episode of Dare to Multiply. One thing that would really help both us and other people who might like to listen in is for you to rate and review the podcast, if you haven't done that yet, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. I'd also love to connect with you on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Feel free to message me with any topics, questions you'd like addressed, or guests you'd like me to interview. Until next week then, please remember, no matter how ordinary you feel, God's dreams for us are always bigger than we can imagine. Let's dare to trust Him for a greater harvest.